Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Social Media Basics for RDOs. This is the second webinar in NADO Research Foundation's 2008 Professional Development Webinar Series. I'm Lori Thompson, NADO's Deputy Executive Director, and on behalf of NADO, thank you all for taking time this afternoon to participate in this webinar. Today's webinar and all of the upcoming webinars in this series are being recorded. Everyone that registered to attend today's webinar will receive a password-protected recorded version in a day or so. As I mentioned, this is the second in a series of webinars that the Foundation will be offering until November. Please note that the topics were determined with input from the NADO Research Foundation Advisory Committee, NADO and NADO Research Foundation leadership, NADO members, and other regional development practitioners. We will be launching the 2019 series at the end of this year and welcome your input and suggestions for topic ideas. There are 3 more webinars scheduled after this one, and we may add an additional webinar later in the year. Topics range from various ways for executive directors and senior staff to better engage their board members, communication strategies and PR plans, and crisis communications. For more details about the webinars and to register, please visit the Professional Development Webinar Series page on NADO's website under the Events and Training tab. The web address is www.nado.org. Lois Wilberding with Formation PR and Brand will lead today's webinar. She has been a part of the Formation team since 2012. Lois delivers top-notch client account services, including writing copy for web pages, brochures, and conducting research into what makes not just their clients, but their competition click. Lois also works with Formation founder Erica Allison to facilitate and lead strategic communication workshops. You may recognize Lois and Erica's names as Formation was formerly known as Allison Development Group, and we have worked with them for about 6 years. They've done much of our marketing and have conducted training at our various conferences. Judging from the slides Lois will use today, I think this will be an informative and very useful session. She will talk about what social media is and why we need to use it, the many platforms available, and how to select the ones best for your work, developing an action plan for marketing and info sharing using social media, and much more. Before I turn the controls over to Lois, please note that you can ask questions by typing them in the box on the side of your computer screen. Lois will respond to questions at the end of the webinar, but she'll also answer any questions that require immediate clarification throughout the webinar. Also, once it concludes, you will receive a prompt to complete a very brief and easy evaluation. I hope you will take a couple of minutes to do that, as it will help us immensely as we plan future webinars. So thank you in advance for doing that for us. With that, let me turn the controls over to Lois.
Thanks, Lori. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking your time today to attend this webinar. As Lori said, today we'll talk about social media basics and best practices. Hopefully you'll find this useful in your daily work. We'll have some time at the end of the presentation where you can ask questions, but certainly if there's something that you're unclear about or don't understand in the middle of the presentation, just go ahead and send me your question and I'll do my best to answer it at that time. So as Lori said, I work for Formation PR and Brand. Our mission is to listen, create, empower, and impact. We work with and have worked with several development districts and COGs here around Asheville, North Carolina, and in the Southeast. So we're familiar with the work that you all do, and we'll go ahead and get started. So you're all here today to learn a little bit about social media. What is it and why is it important? I'm sure you're not a stranger to social media. It surrounds us every day. It's part of our daily life. I think most people, when they think about or talk about social media, they mostly talk about applications that are available out there. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat. But it's important to note that it can also refer to blog sites, sites like Wikipedia, Reddit, and other similar applications. And what we like to talk about with regards to social media is not simply about the platforms, about Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any of the other ones that you might be using in your professional life or your personal life. But we like to really sort of adjust your focus and remind you that it's important to think about social media really in its simplest terms, meaning social referring to interacting with other people, to share information and receive information from them. And media, of course, just refers to the instrument or platform for your communication. So I think if we use this context to frame your content when you're posting, you'll make sure that you have more engaging and relatable content for your audiences. And so really meaning to say that I think a lot of times we're guilty of just putting information out into the world and not really thinking about who's listening to it and what they really want to learn. And so we just kind of throw stuff at people that we find important and not really take time to learn a little bit and think about what our audience wants to hear, and also what might be important in driving our business or our brand. And so we'll get into that a little bit later. We can talk about those specifics, but just sort of something to think about when you're thinking about social media, sort of framing that thought in your brain. So a lot of people will say, why is it important to be on social media? I don't have the time to do it. I'm not really sure how it affects my job or my business. And that's understandable. You know, we're all taking on a lot of responsibilities. We're all very busy, and social media is just one more thing out there. So in thinking about that, though, it's important to think about how social media can help you do your job better, help you grow in your work, help you be received by your community, by your clients, by your community partners, your member organizations. So social media can increase brand recognition. I think we have a slide on this. Remember, your social media networks are just new channels for your brand's voice and content. It's important because it simultaneously makes you easier to find and makes you more accessible to your community partners, clients, or members. When they're looking at your social media, not only are they learning about what you have to offer, but they're also learning a little bit more about you as an organization. And so, and learning that they will feel like they know you better, they'll be more willing to reach out for information, you become friendlier. The other reason to use it is to educate your publics and start a conversation. So remember, through your posts, you're able to share relevant information, educate your audience. So for example, if you have updates on projects that you're working on in your area, if there's road projects that you're working on, or housing availability, grants that are available. I know each of you sort of do similar but also different things, but that's great information to put out there and share with the general public, share with your followers, that they can then share with users in the community. So educating your publics is very important, especially in the work that you do, because you want people to know the work that you're doing in your community and understand the importance of the work that you're doing and your value. Also, to create brand authority, this sort of goes back to educating your publics. No matter what industry or business you're in, social media offers a great opportunity to establish your brand as a thought leader or the go-to source for information on topics in your area. So you want to make sure that if people have questions, they know they can come to you and that you have the answer and you're the authority on those particular topics. With that in mind, it's always important, we like to remind clients to make sure that your content is user-friendly and not full of industry jargon. That happens a lot of times. We sort of get caught up in our work and particularly in acronyms and the lingo that we all use. And while we might understand what it means, if you just go out and talk to a person on the street, they might not have any idea what you're talking about. So it's important when you're posting information to really think about if I were at a dinner party and someone asked me about this particular topic, could I explain it to them in a way that they would understand? And those should be what your posts look like. Because while you will have some professional people following you that know sort of the ins and outs of the work that you do, you also want to make sure you're not alienating or pushing away people who are interested but don't have that same familiarity of context. Social media can also help people find your website, drive more traffic to your website. It's a really great tool to get people to come find you. Websites are quite complex and offer a wealth of information. And sometimes it's difficult to sort of weed through those pages to find the right information that someone might be looking for. So using social media to guide people there and then post the link to a specific page can really help people find you. And then once they're there, getting the information they need, they can look around and see what else you do. And so it's really social media. That's one of the great things about it is it can help send people to your website and they can get to know more about you than what you just put up on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. And then also don't forget that social media can also be a platform for you to collect information. So you can post, if you're using Facebook, you can post a SurveyMonkey link if you want to get some feedback from the community. That can also be shared with other folks quite easily. You can also on Twitter use a Twitter poll. That's a really easy way to get some quick feedback. If you just sort of want general information and maybe you don't have a great distribution list to send it to, then that's a great area to just sort of real quickly throw something together and put it out there in space and let people give you feedback. You can also simply just ask a couple of quick questions and have them reply in comments. So don't forget that it's not just a one-way conversation. It can be a two-way conversation, and it can be an effective tool in that way as well. Let's see. So a lot of people ask, which platform do I use? What's best for my business? That's a question we get a lot here at our office. And there's not really any right answer for it. In general, what I will say is that the best thing to do is to just pick one. Start with one platform and really get to know it, develop a good following, post regularly, get some good feedback, check out your analytics and make sure that people are following you, sharing or retweeting and liking your posts. And then once you feel like you have a mastery of one platform, then you can add another one. What we often see is that people will go ahead and sign up for 3 or 4 things. They'll say, oh, I need Facebook, I need Twitter, I want to do Instagram. And they create an account for all 3, and then they don't post at all. Or they may post the first week or 2, and then they're done. And it's really difficult to try to post to 3 different platforms. They really all want something just a little bit different. And if you're posting the same content to 2 or 3 platforms, you're going to lose. People are going to start dropping off because Facebook's made, for a certain type of post, Twitter's made for a certain type of post, Instagram wants something different. And the people that follow each of those platforms their demographics look a little bit different as well. And so trying to manage 3 or 4 accounts, LinkedIn, all at one time can often be a recipe for disaster. So we caution against that. For most businesses or groups like yourself, we recommend starting with Facebook or Twitter. And then once you have a strong following, you're posting regularly, you feel comfortable with it, you can go ahead and add another one. So let's see, we talked about that, which platform to use. Okay, another question we get quite frequently is how and when to use hashtags. people love hashtags. We see them all the time. People will use 6, 7, 8, I mean, up to 12 hashtags in a post. So I would just remind you that hashtags were created to identify a keyword or topic of interest and facilitate a search for it. So whenever a user adds a hashtag to their post, it's able to be indexed by the social network and it becomes searchable or discoverable by others. So really keep that in mind. They're not really meant, they weren't created, I guess, to sort of be quippy and funny. They were meant to be purposeful. So we really recommend that when you're working with hashtags, that you come up with something that's really relatable to your work and to your agency. Usually we suggest using regional hashtags or a unique hashtag to yourself. We have an agency that we work with in Wilkes County, and they use Be Well Wilkes. They're a health organization, and so that's one of their tags that they use. And it works well. It's easy to remember. It's short. It notates already where they are located, and then a little bit about their mission work right there in a pretty short hashtag. So if you're going to develop your own brand specific hashtags, make sure you use them frequently and consistently, and that's how you'll really get people to remember what they are when they search for them. If they're searching for a post that you posted, then they'll find something that is relevant, and they'll hopefully come across 3 or 4 or 10 posts where you've used the same hashtag. So keep in mind that with hashtags, you want to make it meaningful, be clear, stay on message. If you can use a hashtag that sort of evokes a feeling, then that's even better. You want it to mean something to people. So think about, like, how would I feel about that if I saw that? You're pretty guaranteed that when people read that post and then see the hashtag, that it will resonate with them. Keep it short. Some people will say like a whole sentence in a hashtag. Generally, that's not great for recognition or for trying to remember what a specific hashtag is if you want to search for it later. Longer hashtags, of course, can work if they're funny, but memorable, shorter ones will be best, and they'll stick with people. And then sort of a final tip with hashtags, most important thing, I think, is to do a little research before you use a hashtag. You don't want to start hashtagging a lot of your posts and then find out that that's the same hashtag that another organization uses or business uses, and not perhaps in the way that you want to be known. So it's best to do just a little bit of research and make sure that your hashtags are safe and communicate the right information that you are hoping to communicate. And there are lots of sites where you can go to research hashtags. There's hashtags.org, RiteTag, which is RITE tag.com, and I can send these to Lori. I apologize, I didn't put them on a slide, but I can send them to Lori and she can send them off to you. Tagboard, tagdef.com will define what the hashtag means in the social media realm, so that can be helpful, because you might be putting something out there and then realize people are using it in a totally different way than what you had intended. And of course, one of the easiest, quickest ways is just to open up either Facebook or Twitter or the platform that you're using, and search for the hashtag in the browser. And that will give you a pretty good idea of how people are using it. So that will be helpful for you. When it comes to social media, a lot of people ask us, well, what do I post? What do I put up there? Or we'll run across agencies that are mostly just posting events, or they're posting, you know, they could be posting informational meetings, events, annual reports, newsletters, and that's all great content to put on a social media platform like Twitter or Facebook. But to really sort of get people to connect with you and follow you and not lose interest in you, we suggest following the 30-30-30 rule of content development. And so what that means is 30% of your content should be about your organization and what you do. It should be mission driven. It should be about events that you're promoting. It can also be about your team. Talk about what you do and why you do it, because you know yourself best. So put that out there and be your best advocate. The other 30% of your content is about others and what they're doing. So this is a great opportunity to share stories or photos, information, website links, and videos that relate to your organization. It's a great place where you can promote agency partners, promote maybe some of your, or talk about some of your clients, your member agencies, and others in your network or similar businesses that share your same target audience. Okay, so that will also help you, that will also help grow your list of followers, because if you are promoting others and then tagging them in that post, which is very important, then it shows up, of course, in their feed, and then they can in turn like you back, and then you can sort of create, hopefully, a symbiotic relationship of sharing each other's posts, following each other, and it can also then help position you with agencies or brands or companies that you want to be associated with. And then finally, 30% of your content should have no marketing or agenda at all. Simply give your organization a personality and character. So be inspiring, make a connection with folks, be relevant and personal. You can share stories about your region. You can share an interesting article from the paper, a personal story or photo. You can talk about your staff and hobbies that they might have. It can be something you find funny, as long as it's appropriate. But give your agency a personality and give people a reason to come back rather than just searching for information. Branding. It's really important when you are talking about any sort of platform, really, but particularly social media, that if you're managing one social media platform or many, that you are maintaining your brand standards. So here's kind of a look at our Facebook page. You'll see in the left corner we have our logo, and then our cover photo has our logo on it, but it's not the same logo. So it's an image actually that we use from our website. I think actually it might be the header on our website. And so it relates back to our business, and then we will switch it out if we have events coming up, or if we've done an important project for somebody, and we can still brand it and have it look like Formation, use the same font, place our logo in there, but it still really tells the story of who we are and what we do. So when you're thinking about setting up a social media platform, or if you're just going back and reviewing what you already have, look at it and make sure that it maintains your brand standards and consistency. Make sure your organization looks the same on each of your social networks. Be sure that your profile image and your bio are consistent, and of course ultimately align with your website, because by sort of blending them all together and creating a package, if you will, that all looks similar and consistent, you're creating better recognition for people out in the world. Okay, so social media. One of the biggest problems people have is posting frequently. Now, I did have some time to look at a lot of your Facebook pages before I got on the call today, and it looks like most of you actually post pretty frequently. So that's great. That's like more than half of the battle right there. So one thing that we work with when we talk to our clients is about how to manage your time wisely. Because if you all are posting on your social media accounts, then you know that it really takes more than 5 minutes to just throw something up there on any given day. And particularly if you're trying to make an impact in the world, it takes a lot more time than that. And that time that you're taking, unless your full-time job is social media, it can really cut into the other work that you're doing. And so one of the things that we do is work with our clients on creating a social media plan or creating an editorial calendar or content bank. And there's a lot of different ways to come about that, or to come at that, I guess. But the purpose of it is that hopefully you can take some time. So like we'll take one day a month and then try to plan out all of our posts for a month, or at least 2 a week. And then it's really easy to just drop those in on the days that we'd plan to post. And then some weeks get more posts because other things happen, and it's really easy to kind of throw that information up there. But at the very least, we've created some content for a whole month at a time. And that saves us time in the long run, although it may feel like it takes a half a day or a whole day to create that content. As you get to do it more frequently, it becomes a little faster. But ultimately, when you're halfway through the month and you're keeping up with social media, and it really is only taking you maybe 5 minutes every other day, you're really happy about that time and that you invested at the beginning. So let's see, an editorial calendar will sort of allow you to create purposeful posts. It gives you some time to step back and look at the month coming up and think about what's happening, if there's any national appreciation or awareness months or days, if you have meetings planned, if there's things that you know happening in your community. You can sort of think about that ahead of time and create a post that has really great content. Once the calendar is complete, of course, you can schedule your posts in advance. So on Facebook, on Twitter, you can schedule posts to post automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're managing more than one account, you can use a platform like Hootsuite, where you can go in and schedule all those posts across several different platforms, and then you're sort of done. Or you can just keep the spreadsheet and every day go in and sort of live post. It's whatever really your comfort level is. But the monthly calendar helps you to ensure that you're posting regularly, even during hectic weeks. And we all know that Monday seems great, and as the week goes on, you have less and less time to get anything done. So a calendar can really help you with that. This is one that we created, and it's maybe a little more advanced. It doesn't have to have all of this on here, but of course, if you want to be as strategic as possible, then we suggest that you sort of start out by looking at what are your objectives. Are you just trying to educate a certain niche group of people? Are you trying to drive people to an event? Are you looking to increase your following on a specific platform? So you'll have different objectives, and hopefully you have even really more than one or two. And so this is a calendar that you can use where you sort of outline your objectives and then really think strategically about how you might get there, and then outline some tactics for that as well. And then, each objective probably has a different target audience. And so then you can sort of outline all of that here. And then you have it sort of all mapped out, and it's a pretty effective marketing tool. We have one client that they just simply create a spreadsheet, and it'll say June, and it'll list each week through the month of June. And then they'll actually go ahead and in the next column, write out the post. So like on June 14th, maybe their post is about heart health. And so obviously it's a medical client, but they'll write out their actual post content, and then they'll put any, they'll also save any images that they're going to use in their post in the next column. And then the last column is simply for, did I post it or did I not post it? So you can be sort of as detail oriented and strategic as you want when you're creating a content calendar, or you can just keep it really simple and just sort of map out some posts. Either way works, and you'll have to do what works best for you. But I definitely will say from experience and from working with clients, a content calendar is such a tremendous tool. And it really is worth the time putting in up front to sit and map everything out for a month and then just be able to sort of run on autopilot. So let's see, let's talk a little bit about social media guidelines. Of course, post frequently. I think you've heard me say that quite a bit today. The first step to any social media strategy, of course, is to establish goals and then build a list of followers. And the way you do that is by spreading your message consistently and posting frequently. Nothing hurts an organization more than creating social media accounts and then not posting to them, which I think I've already covered. So really keep that in mind. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Aim on posting to your accounts at least twice a week. More than that is great, especially if your posts are meaningful. If you're just posting to post, I would caution you to be a little more conservative and stick to that 2 times a week. But if you really have a lot to say in a given week, then go ahead and put that out there. Next, be positive. It's really easy on social media to sort of say stuff out into the ether, or to use it as a way to point out what others aren't doing very well, and that generally backfires. So we really encourage folks to stay positive. Your brand's voice should respect the spirit of your organization and align with your marketing approaches. Posts that are positive in tone are generally more effective, and you're going to do a much better job at engaging your followers and engaging the general public than with a post that has a negative slant. So as much as it might be hard to do from time to time, really think about using this as a positive voice out in the world. Next, understand your audience. Understanding your audience will make it easier for you to decide the type of voice your brand should have and which platform is best to reach your audience. So in some cases, again, I'm sort of just talking about Twitter and Facebook because those are the 2 that most people will get started with, and they're most effective sort of in the business world. And so you might know that in your area, everybody's on Twitter, nobody's using Facebook, or vice versa. And so you really need to think about the people that you want to reach and what platform it is that they use mostly. Instagram and Snapchat are great platforms to reach younger markets. Facebook has become a mainstay for adults, despite sort of everything that's happened recently in the news with them. People are still using Facebook. So tailor your posts accordingly. If you have a demographic, if you're working with the aging population, Facebook's probably going to be your best go-to for them. They're on there quite a bit. If you're working more maybe with businesses and county leaders, then maybe you want to look at Twitter. And at a certain point, you might want to, again, take both on and then use posts to reach on Twitter that might reach a more professional demographic, or LinkedIn, and then you say Facebook for maybe the aging population, or community members at large. So just know your audience and think about who you're trying to reach, and then tailor your posts accordingly. We always encourage all of our clients, and we ourselves use analytics. So set goals and check your analytics. Think about what exactly are you trying to achieve with your social media presence. If you don't really have a good reason to be on social media, then maybe you don't need to be on there. It certainly can help you, and I think I've made the case for why it's great to be on social media, but make sure you sort of outline those goals and then stay true to them. So think about why you're on there in the first place, what you're trying to achieve, create a schedule for reviewing the statistics, for reviewing analytics, and you can run lots of reports through your platforms. And so we sort of recommend running a report and taking a look at it at least once a month. The data can help you inform future posts. It can tell you what types of posts are performing best, what days and times are getting the most views and shares, and then you can tailor your posting in the future to match up with that. So pay attention to the engagement that the reports and the analytics will show you, and then use that to shape the way that you work on that platform in the future. I'm going to cover a little bit, I don't have slides for it, but we have time. I'm going to cover just a little bit of Facebook and Twitter best practices. A lot of it I've already reviewed, but I'll just sort of go over it here since we have the time, and then I'll take questions if you have any. So just want to let you all know that despite all of this stuff that has happened with Facebook and their information sharing, you know, they still have, or they have had 2.19 billion daily active users per month in 2017. And that was up from 1.2 million in 2016. So Facebook still continues to grow. Certainly younger demographics are moving away from it, but it is still a growing platform and still very relevant in today's day and age. So some of the things that you can do on Facebook, if you're not already doing it, to sort of grow your followers, of course, is to invite friends and colleagues to like your page. You can always suggest the page, and certainly I hope that you have links to any of your social media platforms on your website, that you're posting them in any newsletters that you might be sending out. You can also link them to your email so that people know that you have a presence on whichever social media platform you're using, and they can go right there and look at what's on there and click to like the page or follow the page. Remember to you know, invite people to communicate with you through that platform too. So again, you can post questions, you can do Survey Monkeys, you can post Survey Monkey links on there to get folks to communicate with you. And you can also use it as a great way to show off your agency's personality. So again, post regularly, use your analytics to find out what the best time of day is for your audience. If you're receiving comments on Facebook, then make sure you're responding to them pretty frequently. Even the ones that are really hard. Those negative comments can be really difficult to manage. So if you need to sort of take a breath and step back, if you get a negative comment, and just really think it through, make sure that you're answering with respect and that you're doing the best you can. You can always ask folks to go ahead and take that message offline, and that you'll message them or ask them to provide a phone number where you can call them and have a conversation one-on-one. Usually when folks are really heated on Facebook, it's best to just have that conversation like live, not maybe in person, but on the phone. And then some people, if you go check their profile, there are people out there, of course, that just like to go post inflammatory things on anybody's Facebook page. So, you know, we always, if we're handling a negative comment, we'll sort of go to that person's page, see kind of who we're dealing with and what their history is, and then handle it accordingly. But don't just let it sit out there in space and fester, because that just makes people angrier, and then it just continues. So if people know that you'll respond to them on comments, you'll get good dialogue that way too. They're not all negative. Lots of times you get compliments or people asking a question, and it's a great way to sort of interact and let people know that you're an agency that's responsive. Like, share, and comment on other businesses and organizations in your network. Again, that's part of that 30-30-30 rule, but keep in mind that when you're doing that, then it also gives you an opportunity to align with other brands that you want to be sort of in the same or on the same playing field with. So it's a great way for you to tell people, you know, we're similar to this agency or to this business. So don't forget to do that. Of course, always tag businesses or organizations. That's going to help you out a lot in the long run. Post content that creates an emotional reaction. So think about your posts. Even the driest posts can be reworked to give it just to humanize it just a little bit. So spend a little extra time to do your best at that. Post relevant and credible news. Again, you want to be a leader in your field, and so posting credible information is really important. If you have events coming up, of course, you can post about your event. You can also use create specific event pages for those events and then share them as well. Or if you've been at an event and you've captured a lot of photos, that's a great way to put them into a new album and share the album and invite people to tag themselves. That gets a lot of traffic on your Facebook page. So those are some just general Facebook things to keep in mind. And then with Twitter, you know, Twitter has 327 million monthly active users, so it's also a really relevant platform out there. With Twitter, of course, we all know to keep it short. And so even though you have several characters, I would, you know, still try to use as few as you can. It's a great opportunity to include a link to a blog post or a newsletter or a website where you can convey more information and in-depth details, and also drive traffic to those venues as well. You can use the Twitter poll. You can create a Twitter poll to get feedback from members, clients, or community members. Follow others, they'll follow you. Again, make sure you're telling folks what social media platforms you're on so that they know where to look for you. Research those hashtags. And then don't forget that even though Twitter is primarily dialogue, that it's great to show or to share photos and videos as well. That will always attract attention, and people like a visual as well. So don't forget to do that even on Twitter. And I think that sort of wraps up our session for today. Does anybody have any questions? It was a lot of information pretty quickly.
So Lois, there was a couple questions here from the audience.
Oh gosh,
the first one was, can you hear me, Lois?
Yes, I can.
Okay, the first one was, what do you think and do you believe Facebook ads are successful and worth the cost?
Yeah, I think they are successful, and I do think they're a very low cost platform for advertising. And I would just, I guess you'd have to be sure that that it's meaningful advertising, I guess, that your advertisements sort of have a call to action. Facebook ads are pretty picky about the content that you can put on there, and they don't want a whole lot of words. So if you're going to use an image, it needs to really capture someone's attention, and then make sure that the copy on that is pretty concise and clear, I guess. But we use them quite frequently, and we really like them.
Okay, another question was, what is your opinion about using chatbots on Facebook?
About using chatbots?
Yeah, chatbots, B-O-T-S.
BOTS. I guess for what purpose? That's kind of hard because this is when the back
I'll
and
have to
forth.
type that in, sorry.
That's okay.
Meanwhile, if the person who typed that question in could give a little more explanation, that'd be great. In the meanwhile, when you talked about the plan, your
Yes.
social media plan, what have you found in your work with other regional councils on staffing? Is it sort of one person does it? Is it any and all? Is there some sort of rhyme or reason? Can you address that a little bit, and sort of what are your suggestions on that?
Sure. I will say that we haven't found a one-size-fits-all with your other regional councils out there. We have run into a couple that have been fortunate enough to have one sort of general PR person that takes the lead on that. I think those folks are really lucky because you just don't usually see that even in larger for-profit organizations. And so really outside of that, we've seen everything from the executive director doing it down to somebody who's, maybe focus area is, working with the aging population. So our recommendation really is finding the person who has an affinity for it. Because if you don't like social media, not only are you not going to enjoy it, but you're not going to do a great job. So I would say sort of that would be a great conversation at a team meeting to say who wants to do this. And then talk about maybe if it's not the executive director, maybe it's that person and the executive director sit down and talk about what their goals are. We generally say one person posting is sort of the best because then you're not, posting on top of each other, and you're creating a voice and a personality that's very consistent. Two people generally can't post in the same voice. I mean, even though their goals might be the same, it's difficult for that to happen. So one is usually probably best. If you have to share it, that responsibility, and then we usually say, like, particularly if there's comments or feedback, before those are addressed, that's something that we would take to an executive director first and just make sure that the reply is approved. Because again, you're putting it out there for the whole world to see. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess one final question. Have you noticed any regional councils that have incorporated a social media policy in their personnel procedures? Or is that something that is yet to come?
Yeah, we have not seen that. When we were at the training in Tennessee, we did have a lot of questions about best practices and about policy. And because really when you're talking about social media, you're really talking about public relations. And so we do have a lot of recommendations, which might be, I think maybe that's what Erica is going to address in a month or so, or that we could maybe talk about. But I think with anything, it's sort of top down. So whoever is taking on that responsibility in an organization just needs to make sure that they have the buy-in and sign off from the executive director, and that knowing that what you're putting out there is really, outward facing to everybody. And so there needs to be real comfort there between the director and the person doing it. And then again, when you're starting to get into some like hot water topics, which can sometimes arise, then it's really important to make sure everyone's on the same page, because someone might see a post and maybe, one person posted it, but a call comes in and someone else takes that call and they're answering in a different way, even if it's just with regards to events or projects happening in your community. So, that's why also a lot of times with the editorial calendar or a content calendar, you can show that to everybody and pass that around the office, and just make sure that, especially like perhaps if you're working in aging, but you're posting information about transportation, that you're using all the right words and that you're describing a project correctly. And so it's another really benefit, which I didn't talk about, of creating that content calendar, is sort of letting everybody see it and give their feedback and get their buy-in.
Okay, a couple of things on that. First, Lois mentioned that Erica will be addressing probably social media policies in a few weeks, a couple months. That's because when we do our September 13th webinar on communication strategies and PR plans for RDOs, Erica Allison will probably cover it in there, so there might be more information about that in that webinar. And a follow-up question to the policy one was, although social media policies for the regional council, what about social media policies for the employees?
Oh, with regards to their own personal accounts.
Well, I guess, and what they might mention about work and things like that. So some of it's common sense, some of it's policy.
Yeah. I'm not sure. That might be a little out of my depth.
Okay.
I do think it's important to have those policies in place. But again, I think that's going to be sort of, agency by agency, and it needs to come from the top down. And we could certainly, that's something that we could give recommendations to, but in general, just as a general question, I don't know that I feel comfortable sort of diving into that. I don't really get into a lot of those policies in the work that I do, and so it might be
maybe
better.
We could ask Erica if she can touch on that at the strategy
that would be
webinar.
I think that'd be best. I just would hate to mislead anybody.
Sure. Lois, somebody was wondering if you could, if you knew of any other social media platforms other than Snapchat that younger folks are using these days that you could maybe just tell people about. Or
I think they're all on Instagram. I'll say that even with my kids and teenagers, they're all on Instagram. And Snapchat, I just don't think is probably the right platform for businesses, unless certainly for you all. I just don't know that that's the right platform to go to. I think Instagram is probably more appropriate, and you still reach that younger demographic, but you're not. There's just a real youthful and playfulness about Snapchat, and sort of a. I don't see it as being a very serious platform, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so I think Instagram is a great place to reach those folks, and a great place where your messages will resonate, and you can still reach them where they're at and make sense to them, while also maintaining your own brand identity.
Terrific. Okay, let's see. I think I got one. So somebody said that they're on Instagram, but they're noticing their main audience are businesses, not individuals. I don't know if that's just a comment or just kind of something that they're trending with their organization.
It could be, and it could. So, that's another. I would start to try to build that social network, invite people to like your page, make sure that the content you're creating. Instagram's really visual, so really work on creating some nice and sort of cultivating, I guess, curating some photos that really are going to speak to people and show up in people's feeds. And Instagram, there are a lot of businesses on there. There are a lot of people on there as well. And so, if you're looking to trend towards that younger demographic, you're probably going to have to do a little more work to find those people and bring them to your page.
Okay. I think that was the last question. So I just want to thank Lois for this webinar. I certainly learned a lot throughout it, and obviously have a lot more to learn, but I really appreciate what you shared with us today. And I just want to remind folks that the next webinar in the series is coming up July 17th, and it will cover board engagement for RDO executive directors and other staff. Information for our webinars can be found on our website at nado.org. And the webinar was recorded, and everybody that registered will get a link to that, which is password coded, probably in the next day or so. And when we hang up and you all leave the webinar, you will get a request to complete our brief evaluation. If you could please do that, it will help us as we plan future webinars and other training events. So with that, I will say thank you to everyone for participating, and thank you to Lois, and take care.
Great, thank you.